was telling you about. It's in the teddy suit.
Oh, no way. So cute.
Yeah, real cute. Listen, those guys were following us. They're here.
Well, what are we going to do?
I don't know. Just keep him dancing. They'll just think it's a teddy.
This is a death race.
You finish first, or not at all. Death Race 2000. To uncover the truth and free the soldiers.
We're going home?
Missing in action.
Damn right.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Brick Pit, the show you didn't know you didn't need. I'm Jason, your host today, and with me is Adam, the star of the remake of Dr. Giggles.
The Sunshine Guild. Don't forget the subtitle. It's a very important part of that.
Thanks for killing the joke.
Isn't that what he does? He gives the joke a lot of gas and then kills it. Hence Dr. Giggles. See, I'm over explaining the joke.
And that, everybody, is Josh, who is the producer of the remake of Mac and Me, being directed by Werner Herzog.
The boy goes down the hill, unable to stop his wheelchair. That would be fantastic.
That would be fantastic.
Just him narrating the original film would be the remake.
And that's a pretty good segue because today's topic is about the Mockbuster. Now, for those of you who don't know, a Mockbuster is a film that is made specifically to ride the coattails of a bigger budget publicized film, like Mac and Me was for E.T.
6 years later.
Yes. Generally, they try and come out around the same time or even beat the other one, but sometimes they're a little slow on the uptake.
And I think we need to at the outset talk about how there are films that sometimes come in clusters because they're developed almost
at the same time. Yes,
but that doesn't necessarily make, because there's like Tombstone and Wyatt Earp. They were in production at the same time. And sometimes there's a race to see who can get out first.
Those are two big studios coming up with the same idea around the same time. It's like in the 90s, you had Volcano, and then you had Dante's Peak. You know, we talked about the disaster film. You know, you had Armageddon and Deep Impact came out around the same time. They were two different films with the same basic idea, produced at the same time, but they were in direct competition with each other. Whereas Mockbusters aren't so much in competition as they're just trying to use confusion to steal a little bit of the thunder from the bigger film by either using similar sounding titles, concepts, or even aping promotional material.
Yeah, they're a con.
Yeah, exactly.
A cheap money grab.
This is a tactic a lot of smaller production companies use. Roger Corman has used it quite a bit. One of the big ones who does it right now is the Asylum.
I would say that, they're like a number one.
Yeah,
right now.
like that's their main business model right now is the Mockbuster. And Canon Films used it quite a good bit.
So one of the things that I learned about this, and kind of reading up on this a little bit, was a lot of these companies, especially the ones, so there was kind of a steady rise in this through the industry starting around 1960 and then really kind of not peaking necessarily, but rising to its sort of plateau in the mid 90s with Good Times Entertainment. The vast majority of the companies that did this, they would have a production budget of say like $100,000 for one of the movies they were making. They considered it a financial success if they made half again what they spent. So if they made $150,000 total on the whole project, that was a huge success to them. The stakes were super, super low. So that, Josh is right. When you think of these, I think of them like a con, because the kind of people who fall for these are the same kind of people who fall for the internet scams and the Medicare scams, and
that's good.
Send your grandson's in jail, and if you don't send me a gift card right now, like the whole thing leaves sort of a sour taste in my mouth thinking about it. Because Jason kind of joked when we were preparing for this about, didn't your grandmother ever send you a knockoff whatever? And that's the kind of people that these things target, are the ones that are distracted or easily confused.
GoBots to your Transformers. And I know GoBots came first. This isn't a toy podcast. GoBots sucked and you didn't want them, is the point. And then you got GoBots instead of Transformers because grandma didn't know any better.
And it was just parents hated numbers. Yeah.
Which was Adam's problem.
That was, that's
the big thing, especially as home video came into effect in the 80s, they would be, the large bins close to the checkout counters of these, like you were talking about Good Times Entertainment. They didn't produce as much. They did mostly distribution, but they would do exactly what Disney was doing, which was, hey, we're going to take this public domain story of Cinderella, Snow White, and we're going to make an animated feature out of it. Well, they were doing the same thing right around the same time and have images that look close to it, but not exactly. These people just at the grocery checkout counter or whatever look over and see, oh, well, here's Aladdin. My grandson will love Aladdin.
Yeah, there was also times where they would just rebrand a film that was already made, like a foreign film or something. I think it was like Kiera the Brave. Like if you look at the cover, it looks just like Pixar's Brave. And the girl on the cover is like even barely in the movie.
Yeah.
But, and it's so good that like if I wasn't paying attention, if I was just like flipping through Netflix, I might click on it and be like, here, y'all watch, because I'm drunk, but I'm getting my kids to watch stuff.
So, Good Times was sort of the pinnacle of this in the mid 90s, and they made their money off of, like you said, doing the Disney stuff. And they did almost all the mid 90s. And everybody who listens to this podcast is old enough to remember the vault. It's going back in the vault.
Yes.
If you don't get the Disney video before January 31st, it's gone forever.
It was going into Al Capone's vault, and only Geraldo could get it out.
Man, there's a reference that like no one under 30 is going to get.
But it's never not a funny reference.
And a lot of people over 30 aren't going to get it either.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's a super niche. Anyway, what they would do is that because of this vault nonsense that Michael Eisner thought was a great idea, which I guess it was because it made $1 billion.
Oh, yeah. It was very lucrative.
How many
induced consumption?
Yeah, so it's funny because now it's like Disney VHS tapes are like Beanie Babies, right? You had all these old women who are like, "Don't mess up my videotapes. It's gonna be worth money someday." And then now we got streaming, and it's like all free all the time.
Yeah.
Disney's sort of not this like you said, for a forced collectible, generating a market that shouldn't exist, manufactured scarcity, created the environment in which hucksters like Good Times Entertainment could make these knockoff films and succeed because they targeted the same kind of mindset, the same kind of people who, I don't want to miss out. Oh, this is a really good deal. I can't, why is this Aladdin $14.99 and this Aladdin's $4.99? Oh, that's a great deal. I got to get that.
Because the $4.99 is only 40 minutes long.
Right.
And it's in Russian.
Yeah.
So one of the first things that comes to mind in this, I think for anybody is and this is specifically is like, Good Times Entertainment released the exact same titled movie with a very similar cover to the video for Aladdin in 93. And it was within like 8 days of when the video came out, or even I think it was when the movie hit the theaters, actually. Anybody who knows anything about Disney's very litigious. They will sue you for any reason or no reason.
We currently have 3 lawsuits against us from Disney, and we don't even talk about their movies that much.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. It would be funny if it weren't true. So they sued Good Times over this Aladdin cover. And when we release this podcast, as part of that, I'll post on Facebook both of the pictures so you can see the differences. And the behemoth fell. Good Times won the lawsuit. And it was really interesting. It kind of opened the floodgates for this kind of stuff. Because then all the people who were like, we don't want to fight with Disney, but we don't want to take the risk of having to fight with Disney. But now that battle's been won, that created this marketplace for a lot of like Good Times copycats,
I think a side effect of that too is that when other people tried to get into the legitimate animation releases, that tried to make decent quality films and blockbusters. Spielberg was DreamWorks early on, and Don Bluth's company, like he did Thumbelina and the one with the Rockin' Rooster or whatever.
Yeah, they
almost, because they didn't have that Disney style, they almost came across as like cheap copies, even though they weren't. Yeah, like even though Prince of Egypt is a fantastic film. Came out like at the height of the Disney animation, and so it looked just inferior by default. And because the market was saturated with all these copycats, right? I think it caused those studios to suffer some. Don Bluth, I'm kind of lukewarm on him. I mean, he did the animation for Dragon's Lair. I felt like he always wanted to draw Fritz Lang type stuff versus kid stuff, but he made kid movies.
It's funny. Secret NIM is awesome though.
But also fantastic. And so is
Prince of Egypt. Yeah. Prince of Egypt, I don't think suffered because it didn't look as well as a Disney movie. Because Disney was suffering by that. That's late '90s. Disney was suffering because
that is true.
Toy Story at that time changed the game, and CGI was becoming more and more prevalent. And like
those
Disney,
for those who could pull it off, but all the other companies that try to do anything CGI
but anything Disney did at that time was never as successful as stuff like Lion King and Little Mermaid and all that kind of stuff. The Atlantis movie they did and all that kind of stuff.
Which the Atlantis movie, the Treasure Planet was what that was really good, but it suffered at the box office.
Yes, and once again, it was a transitional period where hand-drawn animation was going out of favor.
So Disney did what they always do. They just bought better companies.
Yeah.
They took on the mouse and they won. Part of it was, this is interesting to me at least, is that because it has the exact same name, it's Aladdin, and Jason mentioned this earlier, it's because the story of Aladdin is a public domain story, so that's not an issue necessarily. But the fact that they had the exact same title for the movie, and they did this across the board, by the way, they did it for the Little Mermaid, they did it for Beauty and the Beast, Pocahontas, same titles for all these things. Part of that is you cannot copyright a title for a single work of art. The other side of that coin is that, or I should say, you can't trademark a title for a single work of art. What's interesting to this is when I was reading about this, is that the MPAA has rules against this to prevent movie confusion. And so how does Good Times avoid that? They didn't join the MPAA. That's how like, go pound sand. We don't need your rating system. We'll just do that's. So a lot of them have like no rating.
And that's how we got the X-rated cut of The Little Mermaid.
That's nobody wanted to see that much flounder.
Dirk Diggler is flounder. Little Mermaid.
What was the seagull's name in that? I can't remember now. It's like
Buddy Hackett.
Buddy Hackett, that's it. That was the name I was looking. Jason gets me. That was what I meant. What was the actor who played the seagull? The history of this, as far as IP goes, is really interesting because it periodically comes up again, right? As these companies get more brazen about the way they're going to do their marketing, so essentially what the judges have consistently ruled in a lot of these cases is there is a line, right? You cross a line, you lose, but it can be kind of fuzzy. For example, you mentioned Asylum, which is kind of the big boy on the block now. Yeah. They have as many lawyers on their team as they do like production assistants and other people to make these movies, just for that very reason. Because they vet all the things they do to make sure they're going to get paid, right? They want to make money. And that came as a result of a case where they got sued by Warner Brothers because they were releasing a movie called Age of Hobbits on DVD and VH. I guess it would have just been DVD back then, but right as the movie was being released, the Hobbit movie was being released in theaters. Now, you may remember earlier I said you can't trademark a single work of art as a title. But where that changes is if you have a series. A part of the way they lost this case, and Asylum lost. They were sued by Warner Brothers and they lost. And there's a whole bunch of legalese about it. But one of the things that was interesting is that because The Lord of the Rings had already come out, the judge kind of reached and said, well, that's a series. And that trademarked the concept of Hobbits in film. So that's how they lost.
It's interesting because Hobbits are owned by the Tolkien estate as far as in print, because that's why in Dungeons and Dragons you had halflings and not Hobbits.
Yeah, the concept itself was created by Tolkien.
Right. But what's also interesting is Age of Hobbits might be the only Asylum film that is better than the actual movie.
And like in most things, Josh has not seen the movie.
That's what to
make that decision.
But guess what?
It went to the Asylum vault, and so it's in the Asylum vault somewhere. So if you have a copy of The Age of Hobbits, that's a collector's item.
Well, no, they did distribute it. They had to change the name.
So did they? I didn't know that part. Okay.
Yeah. They had to
change it to the Age of Adam.
That makes total sense.
Actually, I think that they actually had to change it twice. I don't know if like the second time they had to change it because they were infringing on something else, or it's just simply because they wanted something else. But I think they wound up using elves instead of
interesting,
Hobbit in it. And I think part of their defense too, wasn't it? They were claiming that they were deriving Hobbit from the scientific term for the tiny men found in Indonesia, the skeletal remains that were named after Tolkien's hobbits.
Right. And so an interesting part of this was the judge used both Asylum and Warner Brothers had commissioned Nielsen surveys to determine if in the public. So apparently there's a rule with trademarking this kind of stuff that if a fictional thing, in this case, hobbits, becomes
ubiquitous.
Yes, culturally separated from its source of origin, I guess is the way I would say it.
Well, I mean, isn't that the case too? Like with like masonite and linoleum
Xerox
and stuff.
Xerox,
that they didn't defend the copyright. It entered the Vulgate. And
that's a good word for that. Yeah, it became in the general consciousness of society as a result of that is that the vast majority of people surveyed in the Warner Brothers version of the question said, "Oh yeah, no, that's a Tolkien thing." Right?
Yeah,
so that didn't help. That didn't help. In the '90s, Disney and other companies who were getting ripped off by these guys played whack-a-mole, constantly trying to litigate them or knock them down or whatever. Then they figured out it was like wrestling with pigs in the mud. And what they realized is, like I said, these guys had huge legal, but like a big portion of the budget for the film is the legal team, because the publicity from the legal stuff actually adds to the sales. Because there's a portion of people in the this won't,
people want to watch a train wreck.
Yeah.
Right.
No such thing as bad press.
Right. Exactly. And so Disney actually essentially, if you're not doing something that they think is something that's going to damage the company, they've more or less just decided to let it go. You rarely see a Disney fighting a Mockbuster these days because they don't want to give them the publicity. They figured out it's not worth the stopping them from making $150,000 when they're making $1 billion on Iron Man, right? They don't.
Yeah,
it's too small potatoes for them. So anyway, that's the end of my line of reasoning on this. I do have another little factoid because I love these, and when I learned about this, it's the origin of all this actually comes from one guy, and it all stems from the creature from the Black Lagoon in 1954, and it was basically from one of the production guys being if you've never seen the creature from the Black Lagoon, the original 1954, it's a classic primarily because the costume of the creature was so amazing for that time that it really
iconic.
It was iconic. It sold the movie. The guy who made that costume didn't have a credit in the film. They didn't put his name in the end credit, and he was super angry about that, and he fumed over it for a long time. And they also apparently they didn't pay him royalties for the use of it, and as things for the creature of the Black Lagoon, like books and comics, also he didn't get any money.
There were a couple of sequels.
Yeah. And
Abbott and Costello meet the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah.
Is that a
Return? Return to the creature from the Black Lagoon. No, there was Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein that used all the Universal monsters and stuff. So yeah, there were things like that happen. They were constantly reusing that.
This guy got angry, and another person that worked on it with him. So this guy, just for the record, his name was Jack Kevin, and a guy named Wayne Burnwick was another guy that worked on the movie, and they created a new studio called Van Wyck Studios, combination portmanteau of their two names, and they came out with a movie called The Monster of Piedras Blanco, almost a shot-for-shot ripoff of the creature from the Black Lagoon, and it was wide release, and it was made on 1/10 of the budget of the creature from the Black Lagoon. The only good thing about it, the guy used the original molds from the original creature that he'd saved in his storage shed or whatever, and he's like, I can crank out these costumes for nothing. Like we have no expense involved in this. So they made a ton of money. And so then they became sort of the go-to people for other creatives who felt they had been wronged by the studios. And so the early zeitgeist of this wasn't to con people. It was to stick it to the man. And I could get behind that. I'm okay with that line of reasoning, but then it morphed over time. So
we'll never get sponsorship with stuff like that. I think that those corporations are people. They needed to be treated as people with respect. Disney is a wonderful company that
Warner Brothers has never done anything wrong ever.
Yes, even Zack Snyder's DC verse. I can't even get through the sentence now. Self-delusion and can only go so far. Apparently, I do have a bottom. Finally, I respect myself too much. No, forget.
Another aspect of this that's been used a lot is, of course, in foreign markets. Copyright protections aren't quite the same in a lot of other countries. And there's also just marketing. Italy is real big about making unofficial sequels to movies just by using the name. George Romero's Dawn of the Dead was released in Italy as Zombie. So then an Italian company released a movie called Zombie 2. Absolutely no connection to the Romero film. But it was such a big hit in Italy that they used the title to just have those same audience members show up for their films. Now, and they did to their own films as well in the 60s. There was the spaghetti western Django, which, of course, Quentin Tarantino used for his Django Unchained, and the Star Wars character, Boba Fett's father, Jango Fett, is named after this character. But Franco Nero played him in the original, and then a whole bunch of other Italian studios started making their own Django movies. That pops up a lot, and hopefully will pop up in the discussion later. But yeah, let's go to a commercial, and then we'll come back and hit some nice little beats on the actual movies here. All right, we're back from selling our souls for very cheap.
And whatever product came up in that.
Yeah.
Once again, the best of that product.
Yes.
Ever.
Yeah. We fully endorse that product. And if you would like for us to endorse your product, get in touch with us through one of our social media pages.
You know, when I use product, I feel good.
Or service, if, as the case may be. Product and or service is
the product and or service gives me a feeling of security
and joy.
And quality. Yes.
And it makes me feel just darn American.
Can you imagine what life would be like without product?
Oh, this isn't a horror podcast. That's frightening.
It'd be like living in the Middle Ages without product and or service.
Man, that's a
I seriously don't know why people don't want us to endorse their products now. That was for free, people.
I know. And, you know, and what's funny is they pay us to endorse that, but it basically sells itself. I mean,
it kind of has to. All right. So before a commercial break, we had been talking about the Italians and how they like to swap titles.
In this particular instance, my favorite example of that, and there are others. So there was a film in the U.S. that came out called Troll that was moderately successful. You saw it on HBO when you were a kid. People of our age that listen to the show. And there was an Italian director that had made a movie. I guess it was Goblin is what it was called because it's Nilbog in the film.
Yeah, that's the actual production title.
Yeah. So, but he was like, hey, I'm just going to call this movie Troll 2 off the coattails of Troll, even though it's literally not about trolls. It's about Goblin, but close enough. And it worked because it got distribution based on that. And it's unfairly titled the worst movie ever, but it has a great documentary called The Best Worst Movie. It is in that tier of so bad it's good films.
Which we talked about briefly in our So Bad It's Good episode.
Yeah.
Which episode was that, Adam?
I don't know because I wasn't in it.
Uh-huh.
It's not really interesting to me.
But just the sheer cheekiness of just like you call the town Nilbog because that's Goblin backwards. Why is this Troll 2? Because it is just Troll 2. People like that Troll. It's Troll 2. It's the only thing that would have been more like ballsy would be to call it Troll 3. So and there is no Troll 2. Just in the trilogy without a second and have nothing to do with anything.
That's funny.
No, that's Troll 3. It's awesome.
Just so you know, It Hurts So Good is season 1, episode 13. But your joke about calling it Troll 3 reminds me of an apocryphal story about a senior prank in high school where you release 3 chickens and you spray paint numbers 3, 4, and 7 on them. And then you let them loose in the school. so that the administrators have to figure out what happened to chickens 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 that don't exist. So you always, if you release a movie that's called Troll 3 and there's no Troll 2, that's actually a pretty clever
You've released
idea.
the chickens in the school. That old saying.
Well-known saying.
I said, "Oh, you're just releasing chickens in the school over here, misnumbered."
Adam, tell me how you're from the rural South without specifically saying you're from the rural South.
Once a year, we would release the chickens in the school.
I said, watch Troll 2 and then immediately watch the documentary because it just makes it that much better. One of my favorite things, they have the director, and it's like, 20 years after they made the film.
Yes.
He's talking to all the actors, and the director, he barely speaks English. Like, it's terrible. You can hardly understand what he says. But he's talking to the actors, shaking hands, and then he goes to, get a drink or something off the table, and they're like, his English has gotten a lot better.
Yes. And another side, it's kind of funny, is Troll 2 kind of has this renaissance because people go like, oh, it's so bad, it's good. And these people who are not professional actors kind of get pulled back into that. It's very illustrative of how you can be put in a bubble, because this very small sect of people are like, this is great. Yeah, Troll 2 is great. And this guy that's been a dentist for 20 years, I'm going to Hollywood. And it's like, no, you're not, dude. You were in Troll 2. They're not laughing with you. And to watch, it's funny and heartbreaking at the same time. Like when he starts to realize, it's very Waiting for Guffman-esque, but real.
Kind of like our podcast. It's
yes. One day we'll realize, we'll go, oh no, we did suck. It's not just a joke.
They're mocking us.
If it wasn't for pity listens, we wouldn't have listens at all.
That's true.
So thank you.
Mom.
All of our friends and family that listen and then lie to us and say, so good. So good.
We are the ones that don't listen and still lie to us and say it's so good.
They say things like, that one episode where you said the stuff, that was funny. It's like us endorsing products. Current episode is my favorite of episodes.
I found out from a friend of mine that he listened to a couple episodes and decided this isn't for him, because that shows his good taste. But he's a nice guy, and he says, so I want to support you guys. So what I'll do is when I go on my lunch break at work is I'll play it on Spotify and let it run on my empty computer while I'm out. And I was like, I have mixed feelings about this.
No, have his friends do that too.
Yeah. That's actually, I feel like that encapsulates the show.
We're literally playing to an empty room and don't even know it. That's
but now we do. So
yeah, that's true.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, no.
You gotta buy them to burn them.
Yeah. Download to download, man. It shows up on the metrics.
That's why we peak around 150 on the Apple charts, man. We're rocking it to the top. We are fastly approaching Joe Rogan's numbers for an hour for our total podcast. So to put it in perspective.
Yeah, that's basically true.
Yeah, that's why I said it, Adam.
Yeah. I mean, but you lie a lot. I mean, people look to me for the confirmation of the things that you know.
Not if they know you.
That's true.
So now that we've made a mockery of this podcast, what about Mockbusters?
Oh, that's
that was my top 40 voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was my bottom 40 voice. Climbing its way down to the bottom of the charts, soon to be forgotten, the Bricked Pit.
I think I prefer your NPR voice to that. Do you have any more, Adam? Or
nope,
I didn't think so.
Yeah, no. So here's the deal.
Don't have to explain it. Just yes or no.
The deal. As is famously true, I hate bad movies. I don't watch them. I have never seen any of the Mockbusters that
you are robbing yourself of some great joy.
Yes.
We have cultivated a list of so bad they're good. I promise you that it is an additive to your life.
There are so many good movies that I've not seen that I don't have time for the crappy ones.
Good movies are for people that with taste.
To quote the great philosophers, Beavis and Butthead, if you don't watch the bad ones, how would you know that the good ones were good?
I don't need to watch more than one bad one. I could set that as the benchmark. I've seen Mona Lisa smile. That's it. I don't need to see anything worse than that.
Tippy toes.
Yeah, this displeases me. You do not understand. You do not understand the gloriousness of watching a train wreck of a film.
You need alcohol and friends. You have 50% of that.
I only have the first thing,
right?
But because
that would be 50%.
The thing is that I don't have the friend. I could watch it. Sometimes I'll watch like if they're doing like a riff tracks of a really bad movie, then that added element makes it.
Make your kids watch it with you.
They hate it too,
dude. We're in a gig economy, man. You can hire people
to watch
bad movies with you, not for you.
See, that still involves me.
Well, we should do a watch along. Then we should do like a watch along with Troll 2 and make Adam watch it, and then we can stream that. It would be like you would be like inside a riff track, except it would be us.
So not funny.
Devoid of comedy, just commentary. It's boiled down to its essence.
It's like watching a movie with Quentin Tarantino. Would you just shut up, QT? For real. I just want to watch the stupid movie.
I think I couldn't think of a worse person to watch film with, because he would be like, and dude, shut it.
Just like constantly pausing the movie. It's like, come on, let's get through 30 seconds of a film without you pausing it to show me something.
Did you see those feet?
No, my daughter hates this thing that I do with my favorite movies, where sometimes I'll mute the movie and then I'll do all the dialogue.
I don't see why.
I love it. I think it's additive. This is way better than the film.
Why would anybody not like that? That's like when you go to a concert, everybody around you sings the song and you can't hear the guy that or gal
money to go to
that you wanted to hear, the one person in the world you wanted to hear sing it, but no, you got drunky dude behind you going, oh yeah, you give love a bad name.
But that's the good part about that, is he's also elbowing you as he holds his phone up recording and smiling at you while he's doing it, as if your joy should be mirrored by his own.
Yeah. Okay, see, now I have to stop the episode and find out why Josh was at a Bon Jovi concert.
It's a Bon Jovi concert in my head 24/7, man.
That's right.
But he only plays movie soundtrack stuff. So it's just Young Guns.
Yeah,
Young Guns too.
You know what's weird is Hall & Oates always opens for Bon Jovi in my mental concert. That's
I do want to talk about, like I said, we mentioned Roger Corman, who's kind of the king of the B movie.
Right. Lloyd Kaufman and Roger Corman are like, whatever you think of them, they're upfront and honest about what they do and why they do it. So like, you have to respect it out the box.
Yes.
They like, I want to make money. I'm not an artist. I want you to give me money. If that means I got to do TNA, well, I'll do that. If I got to rip off another movie, I'll do that. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. And I think like Trey Parker and Matt Stone have mentioned that Lloyd Kaufman is like the only guy in the entertainment business who's never tried to screw them over.
And I can believe that 100%.
Yeah. He's given them every penny that they deserve from Cannibal the Musical. Mm-hmm. Corman, like I said, in the 70s, had created his own studio, moved away from American International Pictures, found out that one of the big studios was doing a movie called Rollerball, starring James Caan, about a very violent future sport that is also kind of used as a political football, if you don't mind the little wordplay there. So he decided, well, let's do that ourselves. Let's ride the coattails of that whole thing. And we get this movie called Death Race 2000.
Which is, by all objective measures, so much better than Rollerball. I love Death Race 2000.
Yeah. It's like, hey, let's take racing and mix it with wrestling.
And with like just gore, like splatter films. My favorite thing is that it is played so straight, because at the end, like, David Carradine's character was Frankenstein, and he becomes president, and these just with no hint of camp or anything. There's like these reporters, and they go, President Frankenstein. And it's absolutely glorious, because it's like, I don't know. It falls in such a weird well, because it's obviously exploitive. It's obviously camp, but it takes itself that right narrow band of seriousness that just like slays me. It's
a lot like Airplane. Airplane works because they don't wink and nudge to the crowd.
Right.
Death Race works that same way too.
The people in Death Race don't realize that they're in a schlocky parody cash grab. Just like the people in Airplane don't realize they're in a comedy. That's like such a key ingredient.
What I love about it, like I said, it's the races are essentially old WWF cartoonish characters. Sylvester Stallone is in this. This is before Rocky, so it's before he became big and a mainstream star. And he's playing a character his gimmick is essentially he's like a 50s gangster, and he's wearing like the pinstripe suit. He's got the fedora and the tie and everything.
It is like if they did a gritty reboot of the wacky races, the Hanna-Barbera wacky races,
yes,
it would be Death Race 2000.
Most definitely, yes.
That's my elevator pitch.
Yeah, that is a great one.
You like wacky racers? You're gonna love this. They hit people for money. They bring old people out that are useless to society and set them out on the roadside for people to hit. And it's like I have such an issue with that same exact thing in Toxic Avenger, but I totally forgive it in Death Race 2000.
Well, it's not it's not set up quite so. I don't want to say exploitative because it is clearly exploitative.
Sexualized.
Yes, yeah. I think that's the big part of the.
If they had just left it with running over the kid's head, I would been all right with it.
But the whole concept of the movie, it's the future. There's overpopulation, so they have like this coast to coast race with these racers, but it's not just who gets there first. It's who kills the most people during the race. And you have people that like stand in front of their cars wanting to get killed so that they can meet their heroes.
It's so cynical.
Yeah,
but it
is.
That puts it right nowhere. I was like, yep.
What's interesting about this, I've never seen this.
Don't worry about the remake, because it is
no.
It misses the point.
Well, there's two remakes. So there's the mainstream one with Jason Statham, Death Race, but they actually remade it in another like beef on. I think they just call it Death Race 3000. But they try and go back, and it's very much that over the top campiness as well.
Okay.
Well, what's interesting is Death Race 2, the 1975 version, has really good both critical and audience reviews on Rotten Tomatoes.
Because it's awesome.
All the other movies.
A lot of those reviews came after the fact, though. I think it was not reviewed very well at the time.
It was very much a drive-in movie.
Yeah. Directed by Paul Bartel, who did a lot of writing and directing and even acting. He was... you'll recognize him when you see him. He was in Rock and Roll High School, but he's also the writer, director, and star of Eating Raoul. And so he has already a very good sense of comedy and camp, and that comes across humor. Yes.
I wish I'd known you hadn't watched it. I wouldn't have given away some of the plot points.
Right.
He wasn't paying attention.
Just remember, sometimes I feel like just yelling out to people, President Frankenstein.
So I'm curious if this is the impetus of like the black humor of like how many points is that person worth? Is it a points-based system when they're tagging these people and running over them?
Yeah. It's also like if a lot of the more violent video games like Grand Theft Auto and stuff like that kind of borrow from the Crazy Taxi a little less. I don't think you ran people over.
No.
You listen to that awesome Offspring song and
over and over again.
Deliver people to KFC. I will not play the non-branded version of that because it doesn't have the Offspring song and it doesn't have that like Tower Records and like all the real spot. I need my commercial. I need to pay my $1.25 to play my commercial.
Because said product and or service was such an important part of your life back then.
Exactamundo.
I am apparently Roger Ebert. Like many movies of this genre, I was torn between walking out immediately and staying to witness the spectacle more dismaying than anything on the screen. This is a terrible movie.
There's nothing finer than a bad Roger Ebert review.
But at the same time, Roger Ebert later realized the importance of the film.
Yeah, fair enough.
And you always have to remember that Roger Ebert did write Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Yes.
So you take everything he says with a grain of salt. As much as he was my favorite reviewer.
Me too. I should say I usually aligned with his opinions most.
Yeah. I had a book that was literally all of his super negative reviews.
Yeah, and I have it on the shelf.
Right, yeah, it's amazing. Like his review of North and and I Spit on Your Grave is another one that he is just he was ahead of the curve on that. But I
always felt like Siskel was too forgiving. He even his mean reviews weren't mean enough, or Ebert, when he hated something, he would just tear it. He didn't hold back. I know this is very on brand for us to talk about a dead movie reviewer from the mid 90s or whatever, but
we already did this in an episode first season. If you would have listened to it,
called Dead Reviewers from the 90s, part one.
Part one. I don't remember part one. I was only in part two. Mm-hmm. I was only in part three.
Gene Shalit got very mad at us when we placed him among the dead.
In memoriam. I'm sitting right here, guys. I'm actually in the studio. Come on.
He and Leonard Maltin were just beside themselves.
What I was going to say is that in my adult life, I've only met maybe 4 or 5 other people who have quoted Roger Ebert, which is weird because, I think he was in the cultural zeitgeist, but you got to really be like a movie person to have, I watched whenever the show with Siskel, fat guy and Baldy on TV and
at the movies.
I couldn't think of the name of it. Yeah. Me and my dad were the only 2 people I ever knew who watched at the movies religiously.
I was a weird kid, man. I loved at the movies.
Yeah. Plus you get to see movies.
Well, this is what's cool.
Little bits of them.
This is a little inside baseball for, I guess, people, but we only know each other basically through the internet, but we have this, we found each other through this fascinating thing that we like, film history and whatnot. And
some of us more than others.
I like watching movies and I like learning about them from smarter people like you guys. But Roger Ebert was a hugely instrumental in sort of teaching me how to watch a movie, if that makes sense. The way he reviewed a movie taught me how to watch the movie.
Yes, he taught a lot of people. He coined a lot of phrases, like economy of character, and he explained Chekhov's gun, in a very down to earth manner.
First time I ever learned about that was from Ebert. Yeah.
All right, so Josh, do you have any other films on your?
I mean, we touched on Mac and Me. Mac and Me was definitely 110% riding on the coattails of E.T. It was just nearly a decade late, which is even funnier. But it worked because I saw Mac and Me in the theater, and that was that's when it was the time I bought myself a GoBot instead of a Transformer. I was like, wait a second right here. This isn't E.T. This is terrible.
Mac and Me with all the product placement turned up to 10 and none of the heart.
Right. It is like the prime example of the soulless corporate film. Because it's like 20 minutes that revolve around the birthday party at McDonald's. And that was just straight up a McDonald's commercial.
Yes. They were literally dancing outside of the McDonald's.
Singing songs about McDonald's. And, when I'm sitting here drinking this cold Coca-Cola, I don't want somebody to tell me about the McDonald's.
I already have my Big Mac right here.
We're Burger King family here, man. Flame broiled.
What really gets me about Mac and Me is, like I said, it's all about the product placement. It's not really about story. Like, they have an attempt to do something there and they just totally waste it. Whereas E.T. is an emotionally mature film. It's a film about divorce. It's a film about having to somebody having to leave.
Fathers.
Yeah.
It's about losing your dog. E.T.'s
it's about a hairless monkey. You guys are looking way too much into that movie.
Well, it is, and it is also about product placement because it is. That was
Pizza Hut delivers at the beginning of the film the Reese's Pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no dancing outside of a McDonald's,
right? So, and we said this before. Like, I don't care if you got films have messages, whether you intend it or not.
Yeah,
that you're conveying. There is subtext, even if you're unaware, it's in your subconscious. There's still subtext to film. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with films having a message. Just do it good. like hide it, and not even hide it, but just because the Reese Piecey thing is obviously product placement, but it
works in the story.
It works within the context of the film, and it doesn't. I hate anything because when you hammer you over the head with it, it's insulting to my intelligence because it's like I get it. I get your message. I can get this. I can read the subtext in the film. It's just, that's fine. I get it. Don't over. Yeah, just don't. So it's like, and so sometimes, people like say, oh, why are you getting mad? Because it's, that's a good message. It's like, it may be, but it's not well executed. And so then I feel like I'm being lectured to. It's like, I don't really care what your message is then. It's because it's so in your face. Just don't. And it's not a political thing. It's an artistic execution thing. I love my corporate sponsorships in the background.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that way a lot as well. It's not just the message; it's how you tell the message. Because I think that's a big problem with a lot of films that come out, whether from the right or the left. Mm-hmm. They're more concerned on. People have got to know, this is about the environment, or this is about coming to Jesus or whatever. It's like, just tell a good story first,
right? Well, you guys in the disaster episode talked about Day After Tomorrow. That is unique among films that I've left because I drove out of that film. I saw it was a part of a 2-parter at a drive-in.
So it's amusing to me that you will drive out of a movie, you will walk out of a movie. I have never walked out of a movie.
Well, because you're not as strong as me.
Now I've turned off movies. I've never walked out of a poet.
Turning off a movie is easy. Walking out of a movie,
that takes courage.
It does.
I've booed movies at the end of movies. I've been in a packed theater. Everybody, periodically a movie will get claps. Some, not very often these days, but years ago it was not uncommon for people at the end of the movie to clap at the end of the movie. I have booed loudly at movies.
I remember Jason was there when this happened. You remember the end of episode 1?
I booed at that. I booed very loudly.
I didn't see episode 1 with you, so I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, somebody that they used to room with just yelled out, "Needs a rewrite." I just sank down in my seat. I was like, dude, come on, man. We've been waiting 20 years. Wait till we get to the car.
Who do you expect is going to hear that and take the message back to George Lucas?
Right.
Hey, we were at Jerkwater theaters, and somebody said it needs a rewrite. So we probably want to get on that.
Pull it from all screens. Yeah. We got to do reshoots. All 7,000 screens. Stop it right now. Well, that's like, there's that progressive commercial with "Don't be like your parents" or whatever. And somebody's clapping at the end of the movie and he's like, "Nobody that made the film is here." That's a pretty good line.
It is.
Like, I don't feel like a jerk for clapping at the end of Empire when they re-released it in the 90s in the theater. Nobody's here, man. They cannot hear you.
All right, I want to talk about because we mentioned Canon Films earlier, so I feel we have to touch on one of theirs, and it's the Missing in Action films, starring Chuck Norris. So if you don't know about these films, they're essentially Chuck Norris is a Vietnam vet. He was captured during the war. He escaped, and then it's present day, which is early mid 80s, working with negotiating the release of MIA POWs still in Vietnam, and he winds up just stealing a helicopter and and going and releasing the POWs. Well, this all happened because a movie that we've mentioned many times on this podcast, First Blood, starring Sylvester Stallone, was such a huge hit that they decided to make a sequel. And the idea that one of the guys they asked for script ideas said, well, why doesn't he just go to Southeast Asia and rescue POWs? Which wasn't even an original movie idea at that time either.
No, let's face it, Chuck Norris did it better too.
Well, what happened? They had scripts done. A lot of people don't know this, but James Cameron actually wrote the first draft of the script. It was before he had done Terminator, so he was still kind of just a script guy. And people really liked his script, and it rotated around Hollywood, circulated around. And so Canon Films like, well, let's do this ourselves. And so they actually filmed the Missing in Action movies back to back. And halfway through like the post-production, they realized that the second movie, where he actually goes and rescues the POWs, was a lot better than the first movie where he wasn't actually a POW. So they swapped the releases and the titles. Huh. And so the first movie they released is set in present times, early mid-'80s, where he goes and rescues the POWs. And the second movie is a prequel where he is the POW.
So I got a question about this. Is this... So, I mean, Chuck Norris is moderately... He's not Rambo, right? He's not Sylvester Stallone in the 80s, but he was successful in the 80s. He had his own stuff going on. So it wasn't when I think Mockbuster, I think no-name actors I've ever heard of. The Italian guy who's coming to Hollywood. I don't think necessarily Chuck Norris. So were these meant to be mockbusters, or were they just were copycat trying to
ride these
the coattails? Once
again, they knew Rambo was coming out. Rambo was going to have bigger production budget. It was going to have bigger marketing.
Studio? Was this like a real studio that released these?
Canon Films, yes, but Canon Films, it would become a very large film corporation by the end of the 80s and then collapse underneath its own weight. But it made its bones. Yeah, it made its bones by doing this, by essentially trying to beat fads to the screen. Do it on the cheap, do it quick, make your money and get out.
There are some good documentaries on Canon Films, and there's several podcasts that delve into the history of Canon.
Yeah, it's very interesting. What is it? Electric Boogaloo, The Wild Untold Story of Canon Films is the name of the documentary. It's really good if you ever get a chance to watch it, because they're a lot like Roger Corman's New Horizons and all that. They were making essentially B film, but they were doing a lot of it, and they were doing it very successfully. They also were American distribution for a lot of foreign films as well, which is something that Corman did. But they essentially started the ninja craze of the 80s with Enter the Ninja, starring Franco Nero, who we talked about earlier as Django. They saw the script that James Cameron did, copied the script, essentially made the movie and put it out before Rambo First Blood Part 2 made it to the screens.
Is it any good?
Talking to you, you would not enjoy it because you apparently don't like movies, period.
Wait, translate.
You only like the Downton Abbey movies.
Yeah. Because you said Chuck Norris was famous, but he was not Sylvester Stallone level of famous.
Right.
You have that level of like action movie famous. A lot of them were just like people like Jean-Claude Van Damme, had that real big kick up in the early 90s and all that kind of stuff. Schwarzenegger, king of the action movie star. But then you have people who are like direct-to-video action movie star, like Don the Dragon Whistlin' and Mark Dacascos. Yeah. Chuck Norris, who not direct-to-video, but very much B movies.
He was like the champion of the B movie up until Van Damme, I would say, took his mantle.
Yeah, because he came through, he was a world karate champion, and then kind of segued into acting from that. With great blockbusters like The Octagon, Good Guys Wear Black. I think Cannon essentially, like I say, he had some success in the late 70s with Breaker and stuff like that. And pretty much, if he made a movie in the 80s, it was a Cannon film. Like they put him under contract and were cranking him out. I want to finish up. I want to talk about one last film before we go. It's from around about maybe 12 years or so ago, from the Asylum. We've talked about them before. I think a lot of people give them a lot of crap for being, Mockbuster makers. Once again, it's one of those things that's their business model, and they make cheap, bad movies, and they know they make cheap, bad movies. And that self-awareness, I think, kind of makes some of their films entertaining.
By the Asylum. So one of the things, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but basically for the last little bit anyway, because Blockbuster doesn't exist anymore, right? There's not Hollywood Video. There's a lot of their money was made. I actually don't understand this. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit here, but
really?
why would Blockbuster or something, or a video release, why would they buy these Mockbusters to put on the shelves?
Because people will rent them.
Yeah, because people will confuse them for the main thing. Like, I know you haven't explicitly stated, but you're referencing the fact that when Spielberg's War of the Worlds was coming out, the Asylum made their own version of the War of the Worlds called H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds, because it was public domain in America. Right. And Blockbuster bought, 10,000 copies of it or something like that, and put them on the shelves because they were on the shelves in the video store while Spielberg's was in the theater. And people who aren't paying attention, they just walk in, it's like, oh, there's that War of the Worlds movie. It's already on video.
So
it's like most voters; they're uninformed, and so
yes.
So basically, Blockbuster was complicit in the fraud. Is what they're
they were well
because they certainly weren't serving as gatekeepers or guardians of
complicit's a strong word.
If you want somebody to give you good movie recommendations, you weren't going to Block.
There goes another part of our audience, our former Blockbuster employees. Sorry, Jody, if you're listening, I would always listen to your Quentin Mr. Tarantino. I would always listen to your recommendations.
So it was just fascinating. But so the reason I asked that is because now with that avenue of distribution gone, everything's streaming. One of the things I read was that Netflix, Disney, obviously they're everything they do is going to be Disney branded or whatever, but Netflix, Hulu, Apple, all of them, they may carry some of these movies, especially some of the older ones, but by and large, they don't either carry them, or if they do carry them, if you search for them, they will show you the movie they think you're actually needing to look for, which is the good one. One of the things I read is that this may be a dying art form, and Asylum apparently releases most of these movies on YouTube now, if I'm not getting that wrong.
That would make sense. Well, there's also on Pluto, there's an Asylum channel.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's ad supported.
Yeah, so
I'm sure. I guarantee you, they probably make more money from that Pluto channel than they do on a typical release. Because,
right.
I mean, if there's nothing on, I'll pop on Pluto, and that's the first channel I go to because it's like I know I'm going to be entertained. And I'm
Hello,
not
Pluto executives.
If I'm not watching Tubi, I'm watching Pluto TV.
So the point being is that my gripe about ripping off grandma becomes less, that aspect of it becomes less problematic in the streaming age, because
I think that Asylum also too has embraced the suck. They have doubled down on hey, here's trans more rough hires.
Right.
But they've also sci-fi was a big prop up for them. Hey, here's something we can buy for cheap, throw it on Saturdays for all the people who aren't going anywhere.
Sci-fi channel, you mean?
Yeah.
Right. The same reason they were in Blockbuster too. With some of the lesser films, you got to have something on the shelf.
Yeah.
Right.
For people to get when all the good movies are out. It's like Sci-Fi and all these other niche channels needed programming. So it's they could buy it cheap, called Sci-Fi Original. Slap that on it. And
exactly.
And so now that you say that, I guess most of my exposure to Mockbusters is through either probably Sci-Fi Channel in the late 90s on a Sunday afternoon or in the middle of the night, as often as not. That's interesting because they just need to fill the airtime. So, fair enough.
Right after Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes came out, literally the next month, the Asylum released their Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes. I don't know if Josh will actually remember this, but he has watched it.
I have I've watched the Guy Ritchie.
You've watched this one as well because we talked about it. It's got Dominic Keating is in it. Reed.
I watched. I watched The Wire. Was that it?
No.
The Wire really. That was a good mockbuster.
Wire, that's good stuff, man.
It's one of those though. embraces just the overall absurdity of what they're trying to do, because what are you going to do to compete against Guy Ritchie doing Sherlock Holmes?
Which may be the only Guy Ritchie films I like, actually.
What you're going to do is you're going to have Sherlock Holmes and dinosaurs and a steampunk dragon.
This sounds like something I should remember.
Most of the things we talk about sound like stuff you should remember, but don't.
How can you verify that I've even seen this movie?
Because we talked about it.
How can you verify that I've seen this movie?
Because you knew actual details.
Maybe I read the Spark Notes.
Yeah, I don't think Spark Notes is even bothering with this.
Spark Notes of Asylum films. Like, you open it up, it's like, read the real thing.
Like I said, it's very overly campy. And I think until like Sharknado came out, this was probably one of the fan favorite of the Asylum films.
So what was Sharknado supposed to be?
Jaws?
It's not really a mockbuster. It's very much just a goofy, campy
Right, that's the spirit
mishmash of tropes.
Okay.
Like Evil Bong.
Yeah.
There's a whole subgenre of horror now that are these cheeseball films.
Yeah, evil donuts and stuff like that.
They're evil chairs. There's an evil tire.
Yeah,
that one's pretty bad.
That is terrible.
The evil chair at least has like some shots in it that are memeable. The chair looking out the window. The guy on the street like, oh, well, you've made some art in some fashion.
What gets me about the Asylum versions, like I said, it's over the top. It's campy. You actually had some good performance from Dominic Keating and the guy who plays Watson. It is the worst Sherlock Holmes ever. I'm including Josh's one-man show.
Sherlock Jones. I didn't know about public domain, so I thought I had to change the name. Yeah, are you including young Sherlock Holmes? Because that was
yes, I am including young Sherlock Holmes. This guy wasn't so much doing a performance of Sherlock Holmes as he was the weird kid in middle school who read like Sherlock Holmes and decided that he would become Sherlock Holmes. Like that's what you're getting at this movie. You want to punch Sherlock Holmes in the face more than you really care about anything he's doing. Like they do one of those scenes at the front where he like deduces something like brilliantly and it tries to copy like the whole flashback, like showing what he's describing, whatever the clue was. And it is just so terribly done. You have Robert Downey Jr. doing Sherlock, and then you have the guy who couldn't get a part in the community theater production playing Sherlock Holmes.
It's an Italian guy that doesn't speak English.
He was too broad. He was too broad for the little theater. God, man, I just pissed off some people. Hey! My mom does community theater.
How dare you? We're never using product again.
On a side note, there a lot of community theater is actually very good stuff. Just to put some salve on that wound from Jason.
Yeah.
Listen, if you have something to say to us, we'd love to hear it. Honestly, and the way to do that is to reach us at anchor.fm/BrickedPit, and there you can actually upload an audio clip of yourself berating us for our terrible podcasting skills and meandering rants. Or if you would like to put that information in writing, you can do that by emailing us at brickedpit@gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook and Twitter by searching for the Bricked Pit Podcast. We want to thank all of you for listening to our show and helping us grow and spread the word. We're super excited. We've had a really good season so far this year, and we're looking forward to continuing. And until next time, I'm Adam. And
I'm Josh.
And that's Josh. And
I'm Jason.
And we don't know how to do exits.
We just stay on until we fade out.
That's why when we do intros, we specifically call out the people. So, and instead of just waving.